Michael, are we ready?
we're about to welcome everyone at home. So just a reminder, however hard it is to resist singing along with Dean, to refrain from embracing anyone that you don't live with or are bubbled with. And other than that, you're free to do anything you like, really, for the service. So we are service number 2. As always, we begin with Shalom Aleichem, as a way of welcoming each other to Shabbat. Welcome all you at home. Shalom Aleichem you can find on page 76 as we get ready for Shabbat.
Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hashem Malachei Elyon Zi Melech Malachei Hamalchim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Boakim L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon Zi Melech Malachei Hamalchim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Baruch Hu Ni L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon Zi Melech Malachei Hamalchim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Tzedhem L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon Zi Melech Malachei Hamalchim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Let's stand up. Let's light candles. Those of you who are at home, get your candles ready to usher in Shabbat. Those of us in the sanctuary, we are delighted that our bar mitzvah this weekend, Jonah will be lighting candles with his mum and dad. So if you come and light candles, you guys, they're just here. I think you might need to, can you reach from there? Shall I say the blessing with you? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Dean, could we slip a shehechianu in? As this is a very unusual bar mitzvah weekend because it's our first ever Shabbat afternoon bar mitzvah. So it means that many of us don't get to celebrate with you this morning. So let's blessing for the first time. This is the first time bar mitzvah in this family.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
So truly this is a shehechianu that we say for having kept us well, upright, and to arrive at this moment. And this has been a long-awaited moment, and we couldn't be happier to celebrate with you this weekend, Jonah, and you'll be hopping onto the bima in a moment. So let's all sit down, ready to welcome Shabbat now, as we go straight to Yedid Nefesh on page 78.
בשוך עבדך, ארץ עונך, ארץ עונך. ידיד נפש, אבהרה כמה, אבהרה כמה. משוך עבדך, ארץ עונך, ארץ עונך. ירוץ עבדך כמו אייל, ישתחווה אל מול הדרך. ידיד נפש, אבהרה כמה, אבהרה כמה. משוך עבדך, ארץ עונך, ארץ עונך.
The Hadodi, page 91.
לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, ונקנה שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, ונקנה שבת מקבלה. לה 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 לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, ונקנה שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, ונקנה שבת מקבלה. תפארת וליתי לה 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 לה. לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. לקראת שבת דברו ונראה, היא בתוך הברכה, מראש מקדם מסוכן. במחשבה תחילה, לה 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 דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. תתעוררי, תראה אורך ומיורי, וביורי שידברי. אדוני עלי יפניגה לה 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 דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. בואי בשלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי כלה, בואי כלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. לה 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 לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, נתנה שבת מקבלה.
Let's stand. We're ready for the Baruch Hu. We're ready to head towards the Shema. Traditionally, we'd say that we've welcomed Shabbat, we've welcomed each other, and now we go towards the central part of our service.
Et Adonai Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed.
Let's sit down. Jonah, I'm going to ask you to hop on up and stand behind me as you're going to tomorrow as well. You can keep your mask on until we get to the Shema. That way we'll keep each other safe. So I'm offering an alternative blessing for the one that blesses light and dark that you have in your Siddur on page 93. But instead I'm using the one written by Rabbi Mark Solomon. You form light and create darkness. As time is a tapestry of day and night, our lives are a weaving of light and dark. Like a slow dawn, we discover who we are. Like twilight, we linger in doubt and anxiety. We endure nights of rejection by others and ourselves, and bright days of acceptance and joy in who we are. You make peace and create everything. We look around and see a world of endless change and diversity. As we rejoice in the variety of creation, we come to accept our own uniqueness. As we delight in our own uniqueness, we appreciate all human diversity and live at peace with ourselves and with all creation. So we're on page 93 in this Siddur as we offer Ahavat Olam with Dean.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Le'olam Vaed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצוך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone, Eternal One, are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You have freed us from oppressors and delivered us from tyrants. You have led us out of Egypt, forever to serve you in freedom. When we witnessed your power, we praised your name and gave thanks. Willingly we accepted your rule, then full of joy we sang together.
ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל Yisrael. So we're on page 96 as we offer our evening prayer for Shalom Bayit, for peace at home, a particular kind of protection that we all hope for ourselves from distress, from illness, from want, and as we offer Hashkivenu now. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל יושבי תבל. Let's stand for the tefillah. We're on page 97 of Shabbat Amidah.
Adonai Sefadai Tifkach Ufia Yiteilatecha Adonai Sefadai Tifkach Ufia Yiteilatecha
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Hasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot U'Mevi Gula Livnei v'Nehem L'man Shemo b'Yahava Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. You cause the wind to blow, the rain to fall, the sun to shine, and the dew to descend. In your love you sustain the living. In your compassion you grant us eternal life. You support the falling and heal the sick. You free the captive and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. Who is like you, source of all strength? Who is your equal, sovereign author of life and death, whose will it is that goodness shall prevail? Trusting in you, we see beyond death. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei hameti. Kadosh atah v'norah shamecha, ve'en lanu Eloah mibaladecha. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el, hakadosh. Let's sit down and mark Shabbat. As Dean sings to us for Shamru, a reminder you can absolutely read all the prayers out loud. It's just not singing. Not yet.
Shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, et HaShabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם ביני ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפל ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ברית עולם.
Baruch atah Adonai Makadesh HaShabbat. Ratzeh Adonai Eloheinu. Eternal God, be gracious to your people Israel, and in your love accept their prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight. Baruch atah Adonai she'otacha levadacha b'yirah na'avod. As always, our minchag for those of you at home to share things that you feel grateful, appreciative for, as we might and hopefully have a chance to soon be able to share as we greet each other and mark our moments of joy and difficulty here in our congregation. Modim anachnu lach she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Tzur chayenu magen yishenu. Ata hu ladovado. Noder lachan saper tehilatecha. Al hayenu hamsurim biadecha. Vial nishmotenu hapukudot lach. Vial nisecha shebachol yom imanu. Vial niflotecha v'tovotecha. Shebachol eit erev v'voker v'tzoharayim. Baruch ata Adonai, hatov shimcha ulacha na'eh lohodot.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Nasi Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Nasi Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Nasi Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael.
Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh HaShalom. So as I invite us all to take a moment for silent prayer or reflection, I just want to share one of the strangest verses, or couple of verses there are in Torah, happen in this week's portion, Matot Maseh, which is all about looking back over the journeys that the children of Israel have taken. But here we have this strange phrase, the children of Reuben, which I find even more interesting, obviously, where they say, we want to stay here. We don't want to continue journeying to the promised land. And what we're going to do is we will build sheepfolds here for our flocks and cities for our children. And Moses rebuked them, and when they proposed a compromise, reversed the order of what they had suggested they would do in terms of creating longevity and settlement. Moses said, build cities for your little ones and sheepfolds. Build sheepfolds for your little ones and cities for your children. So the idea that actually it's all about continuity, whether it's our children, whether it's the children of the community, whether it's that sense of society, of building the future for what comes next, that Moses identified an overweening concern for the animals and not so much for the children. And in our Siddur, I love that we have Greek philosophers in our Siddur reminding us that even they were thinking about continuity. So we have the words of Socrates, if I could climb to the highest place in Athens, I would lift up my voice and proclaim, fellow citizens, why do you turn and scrape every stone to gather wealth and take so little care of the children to whom one day you will all relinquish everything? So I think Paula Kinchin-Smith, a very valued, beloved member of our synagogue, said this whole year, these 16 months, we've barely seen our children online. We've had fantastic Shabbat services, numbers have increased tenfold, even more probably, but we don't see the way our children and our fantastic Zoe has been teaching them, and we get to see the fruition with Jonah's bar mitzvah this weekend, so we get to see Jonah, but I just couldn't resist sharing that lovely moment. Build cities for your little ones and sheepfolds for your flocks. So let's take a moment and think about the legacy that we realize that we've received in our Judaism, whether it's familiarly or just a sense of being in a congregation, as we take a moment for prayer.
Say shalom birama, say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol bnei Adam. Say shalom birama, say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Say shalom, say shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Say shalom, say shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Say shalom, say shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Say shalom, say shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
So we haven't had this for quite a while, that we get to have our bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, and I'm looking at, we've got a few in the congregation that will be coming soon, so that we get to have Friday night and hear your Devar Torah on the bima. So Jonah, I'm just going to pull the step down so that everyone can see you even better. And Jonah has a word on Torah.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for joining me today, either here at FPS or at home via Zoom. I really appreciate you supporting me on the weekend of my bar mitzvah. My portion is from Parashat Bo, which is from the book of Exodus. You may not be expecting the story of Pharaoh and the plagues on a summer's day, when we usually read this story in the dead of winter, as it is quite a famous story in Jewish tradition. You may have heard it around your Passover table during the Seder. Thanks to the pandemic, there have been some major changes to my bar mitzvah. For starters, many of you are here on Zoom, and secondly, we are reading from the book of Exodus, but I don't need to ramble on and on about the virus, as that's probably all you've been hearing in the last year. My portion opens after Pharaoh has let the Israelites free from Egypt. He was stubborn throughout, saying yes 1 minute and then changing his mind all the way through the 10 plagues. The last one was especially cruel, and some would say overly cruel, and only when Pharaoh lost one of his own did he stop and let the Hebrews go. Was this displaying his selfishness in Pharaoh? Personally, I think this action was very selfish. It also shows something about human nature. Often, we can never really experience true pain or feel empathy for others unless it's happening directly to us. For example, you may see something on the news of a young person who has passed away, and for a split second you would think, oh, that's sad, and then continue with your day. But how would the family feel? How would it affect them? My Tzedakah project speaks to the power of empathy and loss of young lives, but I will talk about that more later. A very important question that links to this portion is whether God was right to summon the last plague. And my answer to that is, to be quite honest, I don't know. It could be argued that God was right. In the face of cruelty, God responded. We can link it to a famous question that many philosophers have struggled over. Is it morally correct to kill one group of people to save a much larger group of people? In Judaism and many other religions, you are allowed to break any law in the Torah if it is to save one life. This is called pekuach nefesh. So God's decision could be justified in this sense. However, it still feels immoral to punish others for their leaders' poor actions, even if it was to save many more lives. In my portion, it says, you shall tell your child on that day, it is because of what the Eternal did for me when I came out of Egypt. This sentence is quite important to me, as it relates to my bar mitzvah, and indeed one of the reasons I wanted to do it. That is, to keep my Jewish religion alive and pass it down to my children, so they can pass it down to their children, and so on and so forth. We as Jews have had some pretty tough times over history, being pushed out of many places we have tried to settle in, so I believe it is very important to celebrate the liberation of our ancestors, and therefore keep our traditions alive like I'm doing today in my synagogue. Well, tomorrow, reading from our Torah and having my family and friends with me. I'm very lucky to be reading directly from one of our Czech scrolls, which is so precious to the FPS community. The scroll is one of over 1,500 taken by the Nazis from synagogues all over Czechoslovakia in the Second World War. They were rescued and destroyed and then distributed around the world. This story of survival also has a strong relation to tradition, a big theme in my parasha. We are often asked why bar mitzvah is important to us. I see my grandmother as part of telling children of their Jewish tradition and inheritance. She would always say to my mum, please God, I get to see Jonah's bar mitzvah. Having my bar mitzvah is for me, celebrating my independence and becoming a Jewish man. It is also a way for me to become close to the Jewish community, which opens up many new experiences and to understand my faith more and more. And connecting with friends and classmates and my teachers have been a part of that. I would like to thank my amazing teacher John, who I think is here on Zoom, for everything he has done for me. He has taught me and others so well and worked so hard, and I would like to thank him for his dedication. I'll always remember our chats on Zoom before we got to work, talking about football and tennis, and when you always bring us chocolate biscuits every hour. So thank you, John. I'd also like to thank Rabbi Rebecca for her support and guidance on this journey, and Dean and Franklin for all the lovely music, which is really part of the character of FPS that I really like. And thank you, Josie, for doing everything you could, helping my bar mitzvah and managing to put a little Arsenal logo on my Torah leaflet. Coming of age in our synagogue means choosing a project which we believe in and want to support. I chose my Tzedakah project to be raising money for the Kayan Prince Foundation, which helps young people getting off the street and into something positive instead. This is such valuable and important work due to the amount of people who get sucked into gang culture and a life of violence. Kayan was a young boy who had everything to live for, playing football for Queen's Park Rangers, who was stabbed whilst trying to break up a knife fight between two kids. In the midst of his grief, Kyan's father started a charity helping kids to find worthwhile passions like boxing and other sports. I wanted to support this charity because our kids are the future. We must support them to fulfill their potential. It also links to my parashah about making sure your children are safe and informing them of dangers in the wider world. I'm very lucky to be close to my parents. They've always taken me to interesting places and been very supportive of me, which I'm now very grateful for, as it has developed me into the person I am today. They've helped me massively with my bar mitzvah, even my dad who isn't Jewish, and I owe them a lot. As an only child, I've had quite a special bond with both of them, which I really like, as I'm able to make jokes with them without them getting offended and have them as my friends and not just my parents. So thank you, Mum and Dad, for everything you have done for me. That's it.
Kol hakavod, Jonah, that was wonderful, and I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling that for you. Huge mazal tov to you.
Thank you.
So we can all stand up now. This is the first time we have a bar mitzvah boy who's already thinking about the children that he hopes to have. So obviously when we talk about becoming a man, we're not necessarily thinking that far ahead. But thank you, Jonah. Jonah, really, you've brought out so much of the Torah, so much of why you feel proud to have a bar mitzvah. So lovely to speak of your grandma, who I know is going to love hearing that tomorrow. And so lovely for us as a Friday night congregation to hear it. So thank you, Jonah. We are now going to Aleinu on page 520.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotze bereshit, asher sam elkinu leyahed et shemo, v'nor aleinu lehamid malkuto. Nor aleinu lehamid malkuto. Anaknu torim u'mishtachvim u'modim B'fnei melech malchei hamlamim Akadosh Baruch Hu. Akadosh Baruch Shehu noteh shamayim v'yoseh haaretz, Moshanim tarom b'shamayim v'ha'am, Shekhinah guzo b'tovei Elohim, Hu Eloheinu Enoch. Emet malkeinu efes ulato, הכתוב בתורתו ביד היום, ואשר אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת.
Thank you, Dean. So I invite us now to turn to page 524. As a congregation, we mark the yahrzeits that fall at this time in our community. We think particularly of Harold and Sadie Sheila Collett, father and mother of Andrea, grandparents of Alexander, Ruth and Natasha Collett. Alaric Cotter, partner of Bobby Hood, whose anniversary of death falls at this time, as does Lou Lewis, father of David Lewis, Charles Hardoon, father of Janet Barak, Audrey Jacobs, grandmother of Zoe Jacobs, Simon Lazarus, son of Myrna Lazarus, Helena Needleman, aunt of Adele Carr, Harold Rose, uncle of Lillian Gelnick, and Martin Salmons, brother of Lillian Gelnick. Zichronam livracha, may their names be for a blessing, and may all those who recall and remember their loved ones be comforted in their loss as they get to remember and recall their loved ones. Let's say the words of the Kaddish together with them. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shamei rabbah, bi'ama divrach yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'hayachon v'yomechon, v'v'chayei dochol beit Yisrael, Magala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mavorach le'olam amel maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithada v'yitale v'talal shemed kudusha brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbahata v'nechemata. Da'amiram bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya. V'hayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'al kol b'nei Adam. V'imru amen. Shall we sit down and get ready to go towards Kiddush? This is only week 2 of you finding your own baby personal Kiddush under your chairs. I don't know whether Zoe asked you guys in Kita Chet in our Bar Bat Mitzvah class whether you were going to lead Hamotzi for us. So we will go now straight. Before we go into Kiddush, we will bless each other, bless ourselves. This is the melody that Dean wrote for Yevarechecha, the blessing that we say to each other, the priestly blessing, but particularly children receive this blessing, and Dean wrote it for his own sons, bar mitzvah moment. So we think particularly of you tonight, Jonah, of the blessing that you bring to your family, of being the first, as you describe, in your family to have this bar mitzvah, and we wish you so much joy and mazal tov, and just pride of you in our community. Yevarechecha.
Yesimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'hi Menashe Yesimech Elohim ke'Sara v'Ivkara el Leah Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom v'yasem lecha shalom.
So let's stand for Kiddush. Any of you in Kita Chet would like to come up and do Hamotzi? It's right here. You can do it over here, socially distanced. We'd love to have you leading. So Aaron, Hannah, if you want to stand over here. Jonah, I'd like you to, Ben, but I kind of get that you're being really careful so that you can also be on the bima here in 7 days' time, ready to lead us. So up to you if you want to come. So let's go into Kiddush. Pick up underneath your chair. You've got your wine. Some of you might have grape juice, so that we're ready to go into Kiddush together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom tehillah lemikrae kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'achata ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-shabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. Jonah, if you want to pick up the plate of challah, hold it between all of you. Hannah, if you want to whip off the challah cover, and wonderful. And let us, don't worry. And do you want to, after 1, 2, 3, lead us in Baruch atah Adonai? Yeah? 1, 2, 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
So beautiful. Thank you. I'll take these back. Thank you, Jonah. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Ben. Shabbat Shalom to you. So, some of you are staying here for our first outdoor activity. Some of you are going home. So, I will walk out now. Everyone should head the same way. And I'll come back to say Shabbat Shalom to you online in a moment. So once you've had, if you don't mind taking your Kiddush plate and popping it, if there's any space, on the table at the back. And otherwise,